25 years ago, as young Indian soldiers fought to regain these heights, many of which had been captured by Pakistani soldiers, the Indian Air Force played a sterling role in the war. I was lucky to be on board Indian Air Force Mirage 2000s at the end of July to get an idea on the role of the Air Force. But just a couple of days prior to that was when a young Indian flyer, Flight Lieutenant K. Nachiketa, had an extremely trying experience. He was flying a MiG-27, he ejected, he was caught by Pakistani forces. Joining us now, Group Captain Nachiketa. He retired as a Group Captain in the Indian Air Force. He flies now commercially, but it's wonderful to speak to you and perhaps for the first time get a real idea of what happened. So let's start at the beginning.
Thank you.
You ejected because you had engine trouble, right? And you were flying a MiG-27.
Yeah, so we had got airborne from Srinagar, which is somewhere this side. And what we see here is the Dras subsector. Behind this we have the Patalik subsector. And my target was there, a place called Munthodalo. We had a huge enemy logistics camp. So we got airborne in a set of 4 aeroplanes, Boxer 2 aircraft followed by Hyena 2 aircraft. Me and my leader, Colonel Manticore, we were firing rockets. So after the rocket attack got over, I had an engine failure. Now a MiG-27 is a single engine aeroplane, and in case of engine failure, either we do a relight or we have to eject. In my case, I did the relight process, but because the altitudes are very high, 12,000, 14,000, 15,000 feet, so I ran out of height. So once I saw the hills gushing towards my aeroplane, I had no option but to eject. So
And
I
you
told.
were at what altitude?
So this ejection happened around 15 to 16,000 feet, which is very high. So I gave a call to my leader that Mando, I'm ejecting, and I left the aeroplane. So fortunate decision to leave, because within a very few seconds, as soon as I got my senses back, I could see the aeroplane crashing onto the hillside. So I could have gone with that. So
Were
that
you
was a good
unconscious
decision.
for a few moments as you ejected?
Yeah, so we have a blackout or a grey out situation for a few seconds. So of course it was not very long, but as I came out of the grey out situation, I could see the aeroplane crashing into the hills.
Right. And then what happened?
Yeah, so after that, once on the ground, it was all white at that time. So the initial, the comfort of a fighter cockpit which is there around us had gone away. And for a fighter pilot, it's very important that we have that comfort. So once I came out of that comfort about where I was at in the hills at 70,000 feet, all snow around, body not acclimatized, and just one small macro pistol carrying 8 rounds of in the magazine.
So just eight rounds is what you had with you on your personal sidearm.
Yeah, we carry 8 plus 8 reserve,
Right.
so 16 of them. So
Right.
the first thing which I realized that I had to orientate whether
Yeah.
I was with our in the area where our forces were there,
Yeah.
enemy forces were there. So by the time I was hiding all the classified information which we carry and getting a sense of what was happening, I could see a lot of firing taking place. Now because it was all white, I could not figure out whether who was firing and whether it was aimed at me or whether it was some random firing. So I just ran to take some cover behind some boulders, and that is when I saw a group of 5 to 6 troopers making.
What were they wearing? Were they in military camouflage or
Yeah,
were they
so
wearing
in
black or?
military camouflage, because it was a white background, they were in white background. So I
I
couldn't
see.
make out whether they were regular forces or whether they were not the regular forces.
Snow-weared, per se.
Okay, exactly. So, but at this time it was very clear that I was not in area where our forces were there, because they were firing towards me and making a kind of an ambush, a semicircular ambush, and climbing towards me. So I fired my macro pistol at them, but 8 rounds got over very fast, and they were continuously firing their AKs towards me. And before I could load my second round of magazine to again recommence my firing, the first of those guys had come to me, and like somebody you covered 25 years, so 25 is a very long time, but even now after 25 long years, that guy's eyes and face is so clear when he shoved his barrel into my mouth, and I was looking at his trigger finger, whether he'll pull the finger or not, and I still remember the face so clearly. But again, destiny has some different designs for us, and the army captain who was in charge of that platoon, he stopped him. He was a part of a regular forces called 5 NLI. So he came, he stopped them, and then he was able to convince them that I was doing my duty as a soldier when I'm firing, but they were trying to say that this guy was firing rockets and now firing on the ground. But that army captain prevailed on them, and I was made a captive, and then we went to the campsite.
And where was the campsite?
So the campsite, we had a walk of about 1 hour, 45 minutes to 1 hour walk from the place of ejection towards approximately northeasterly direction.
So it was on the other side of the LC, or were you held within Indian territory at that
So
stage?
at that time I was not aware where exactly I was, but many years back when I came back to the same area, courtesy Army helicopter, I realized that we were about 6 to 7 kilometers inside LC, our side.
Right.
So this was the infiltration which took place, and their forces had
So
come
you
to
were
our side.
captured by Pakistani forces in Indian territory.
Absolutely, there was no doubt in that.
It wasn't as if you after ejecting, you had parachuted onto the
our
other because you're
ejection-
operating in
Yeah,
proximity.
ejection was on our side, and the SOP was very clear to all the pilots by rules. The orders came from the high formation not to cross the LC.
But where you were held in this particular post, that was on the other side.
No, even that is our
Even
side.
that was on your
Exactly.
on our side. And then what happened there?
So we spent about an hour and a half there.
And you were able to walk and things like that. Were you injured?
Yeah, so after the ejection, there's a post-ejection trauma is there,
Yes.
so I had a back pain and all. And while walking, we reached the campsite, and because of the wet snow and all, I could see some part of cold seeping into my shoes. So these guys were okay. At the field level, that captain, of course, was very good. I have a lot of respect for him at a person-to-person level, because he saved me from his troopers when they
Yeah.
captured me. And here he gave me some kind of a first aid. We had some conversation. And after about an hour or so, we got a helicopter to pick me up from there, and they took me to a place called Skardu, which is
Right,
further
right.
up into the LOC.
Yeah.
Now, I'll just add something here that when our forces took over this area after a month, when army finally took over this area, and this entire part of the land came back to us, this army officer was killed. I got to know because I got a extract of his diary from our army intelligence sources, and I have a lot of respect for him for the way he treated
Yeah.
me.
And were you interrogated in Skardu?
Skardu was something called a soft interrogation, wherein it's just some kind of paper action, because it's not a field where they are specialized in this.
Right.
It's a force station basically.
And did they move you from Skardu?
Yeah, so after about 24 hours, there was a C-130 which came, and I was shifted to Islamabad and Rawalpindi next day.
And that's when things really got tough.
Yeah, so they took about 1 day there to finally declare me uncooperative. And after about that 1 day, they decided that I'm not cooperating with them. So that is when they handed me over to the ISA and the specialist cell, which do all this.
Yeah. And they did what?
Yeah, so these 3.5 days was quite bad because staying alone in the cell with a lot of interrogation techniques of heat, standing, hitting, food not being there. So it becomes very tough because they want to break you mentally, physically, emotionally, so that I start talking to them. But I was again a bit lucky because by the time this part gets over, we get into a state called drugs or third degree. In case we start third degree, I believe, which I got to know later, then the situation of being sent back is not there, because all the injuries on the
survive it.
one is survival. Secondly, till now all the injuries they can explain by saying that he was trying to escape and all these things happened. But when the third degree starts, you'll have marks on the body which you can't explain. But I was lucky before that stage came, the decision came to get me back to India.
But just in terms of what they did to you, heat means what? And hit, I understand, they beat you with what, sticks?
Yeah, so it's the entire process. It's a very systematic process which I believe has been there since long. 71 war also the same things followed. So they step up the process, wherein they keep stepping up and see where you will break down. So physical hardships, then mental hardships, then the heat treatment starts. Then
The heat treatment is what?
so a lot of high wattage bulbs on the cell pointing towards you, and denial of food, denial of sleep is very important.
They electrocute you.
No, not electrocution. That comes later. But
They did beat you at that stage.
yeah, beating and all is
With
pretty.
sticks or with their hands or...
Yeah, and so what happens is if they deny you sleep, so then you start, and they deny you sitting down, that the entire process. So obviously after some stage you can't stand, so you start falling, then they start hitting. So now it becomes a conflict of which pain is more, the pain of not eating, the pain of not sleeping, the physical pain of being hit on the body, or the mental pain. So all now you start prioritizing which one you can take more, which one you can't take more. So that the entire process becomes like that.
You've never spoken about this aspect before. Is it because it's taken you so many years to come to terms and be in a position where you can talk about it?
Yeah, so I retired in 2017. So till the time I'm serving, we don't talk of all this. So I did not speak. And after retirement, this is the first time actually I'm coming out to a place like this where I interact with media personnel like you. So that's it. So basically that is the main thing. And of course, what happens is that part of my POW phase was not very comfortable to talk. It's a 3.5, 4 days of life which is very tough mentally, and sometimes it can lead to some hidden trauma which can come back. So usually I avoid talking about that.
And then you found out that you were coming back home. How did you find out?
Yeah, so even the only way I could make out was that I was shifted back to the safe house, and I got some new clothes and people gave me food, and I got all the basic facilities back. I could make out something had changed. They did not tell me at that stage, but I could sense something had changed. So after about 1 day of giving me some basic rest and food and sleep and getting me back into some kind of a shape, I was taken without a blindfold for the first time through the city. So that is when I could make out that I'm traveling without a blindfold.
Right.
So I went to a place called ICRC, International Red Cross Society. So we don't hand over a prisoner directly to the other nation just to preclude any future implications. So they have basic medical checkups are there, there's some documentation, and then they hand me over to the Indian Embassy. So this process took
And
place.
the embassy brought you back through the Wagah border, or?
Yeah, I spent a day there with the defense attaché, and there was some paper documentation because I did not have a passport or visa.
Yeah.
When it got from Srinagar, there was no plan to go across.
Yes.
So there was some basic visa documentation. I spent time with the ambassador. This is the time first thing I did, I went back to embassy, spoke to my parents to tell them I'm fine. Then I had a word with the Prime Minister, Mr. Vajpayee, our chief.
I remember that. You went up to him, you saluted him. What did he tell you? You got video of that.
Yeah, we have video, but since I was still in a state of shock, so it's very difficult to recollect what exactly happened, but I'm sure he was very proud of the entire fact and that I've come back and that things are back to normal.
And then you went back to flying, but you couldn't fly fighters. You moved on to transports. Was that a result of the injury? I mean, it's common among fighter pilots after ejecting to not be able to fly fast jets. And now you are a commercial pilot and you're doing very well.
So what happens is when you eject, especially if you're tall, you can have something called compression sickness, compression injuries on the spinal cord. In my case, that was complicated by no rest after the ejection.
Right.
So I think I had a multiple compression on the dorsal part of the spine. So all the medical things which took about 3 to 4 years, they realized that I cannot fly the ejection seat once again.
Yes.
So I shifted to transport aeroplanes. During these 3 to 4 years, I flew the unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs,
Right.
which we had procured. Had they been there in the first place, we would have had a beautiful coverage of all this.
Yeah.
So that is it. And I came back to transport aeroplanes, and at 17 I retired from the Air Force and I joined commercial.
And you like flying, so you keep flying now, right? It's a passion for you, besides the job aspect of it.
Yeah, like I always say, the heart of the pilot is in the cockpit. So whichever aeroplane you fly, I think as long as you're flying, that's so beautiful and divine. Other things don't matter.
You know, Group Captain Nachiketa, you're a real hero for India and what you did and what you sustained. And I appreciate your candor and willingness to speak about this. It's something that India needs to know, what you went through and what happened after you were captured. But it's wonderful to see you over here 25 years later, you were saying.
Thank you so much. I was just saying that all of us, all soldiers, all the 520s and martyrs, 1,000+ people who got injured, I think all of us have done the same job. Single-handedly focused effort to get our area back, which was taken over by infiltrators, and all of us at the same level. It just so happens that I was on a MiG-27, which has more visibility, more glamour and higher speeds. Otherwise, I'm sure all of us are basically soldiers at heart, doing a job for which we are signed up for.
Right. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
you.
Thanks so
Thank
much
you,
indeed.
Thank you so much.